Alright, you guys, it's been a while since I've actually posted a video here on YouTube. I think it's been about 2 months, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but I wanted to come back with a video regarding excessive eating. And I kind of, the last few months, fell off of the intermittent fasting wagon, but since about the 15th or the 16th of this month, excuse me, I've got myself back on the intermittent fasting program where I don't eat until at least 6 p.m. and I prefer to eat a little bit later in the evening, around 8 or 9 p.m. 8:30 roughly, give or take, is my ideal time. I like eating later in the evening. I just feel better this way. A lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't eat that late at night, but with me and the amount of exercise I've been getting lately, and when I do get a lot of exercise, I like to postpone my eating window a little bit later at night so that the efficacy of fasting, I get about an hour and a half or 2 extra hours of the benefits of fasting when I eat later at night, as opposed to, you know, eating at 6, you name it. So, you know, I do usually fall asleep between 1 and 2 a.m. lately, so due to the fact that if I eat around 9 o'clock after I eat, I'll have a little bit of time, a pretty decent amount of time to actually digest that food and go to sleep with a relatively empty stomach. But it feels so much better to get on a program where you eat less. In my opinion, the less you eat, the longer you live. I think that properly administered caloric restriction is one of the greatest ways to enhance your longevity, and there's a handful of different studies showing that caloric restriction can indeed lead to lifespan prolongation, and who doesn't want to live a longer life? Not only does caloric restriction have the ability to potentially elongate the lifespan of your life, but it also has the potential, if done properly, to increase the amount of joy in your life, the amount of activation in your life, because the less food that you constantly have in your system being broken down equates to your body using that energy that you would be using to digest to facilitate growth within the cells, to enhance your creativity. A lot of the detrimental effects that food has on the system, let's rephrase that. Eating excessively and constantly being in a state of digestion leads to a state of expelled energy that could be used to facilitate greater health and healing, but it also leads to an expansion of the mind, because the foods that we're eating, most people are eating foods that have a direct effect on the brain, a negative effect. So when you free up some space, so to speak, and stop eating all that stuff, and you enter a fasting protocol like intermittent fasting, it allows your mind to reach a whole new level of creativity. Thoughts become more laser-like. Your ability to recall things becomes better, at least in my own personal subjective experience. My memory gets better, and overall I just feel much better. So it's interesting, for the last few months I would eat lunch, sometimes breakfast, usually just lunch. I never really like eating lunch, ever. So it was interesting for me to consume more food and see how it really affected my weight and my overall well-being. And now that I'm away from that and back on the 1 meal a day thing, my creativity has spiked, my health has spiked, my skin feels better, and overall I just feel much more activated, so to speak. So for those who don't know, I should have started off by saying, I should have started off this video by explaining what intermittent fasting is. Intermittent fasting, you guys, is when you fast for a predetermined amount of time every day before you have a meal. So I like to, when I can, fast for 21 to 23 hours a day and only have an eating window of about 1 hour to 3 hours. Can't always do that. So sometimes I'll even fast for 16 hours a day, and then have an eating window of about, 8 hours? But I try to keep it between 1,500 and 1,900 calories a day when I'm intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is beautiful, you guys, because it allows you to derive the benefits of fasting without having to become a martyr, so to speak. Many people want to fast for 7 days, but they just don't have the mental ability and the physical ability to do so, whether it be they have a job, or some people just like food. I mean, I like food, I like to eat. And what's beautiful about intermittent fasting is it allows you to fast, derive benefit from fasting, while still getting to eat a meal every day. It makes fasting much more approachable, especially for commonplace folks who have 9-to-5 jobs and are constantly busy and need some fuel and some energy. But right now I'm just absorbing some sunlight, trying to keep my eyes open as wide as possible, but that sun is really, really strong. But it feels so good to have some sun on my face, and allowing the sunlight to come into your eyes, allowing the photons, the sun, to come into your eyeballs. The light is very beneficial to a multitude of different things within the physiology. So getting some sunlight is essential. But I even absorb sunlight better when I'm fasting. It's interesting how so many different things seem to work more efficiently when you're in a fasted state. For many people, the digestion increases massively. My digestive fortitude becomes so much stronger, you guys, when I fast. It's ridiculous. When I'm eating constantly, it's easy for things to get backed up and your digestion can become sluggish. So many people, in my opinion, can benefit from intermittent fasting, especially people, well, not especially, but people with digestion issues could most likely benefit massively by stopping to, refraining from eating so much. Now, here in the West, the backwards model of treating constipation is to treat it with more fiber. That is not beneficial, in my opinion, based on my own experiences, trial and error, research, you name it. Adding more fiber to your system when you're in a severely constipated state, you guys, usually just makes things worse, and it doesn't completely empty out your bowels. Here in the West, they've taught you that in order for you to clean your bowels out, you need to constantly be pushing fiber through them. Usually people who have weakened digestion are people who are eating so much that they're depleting so much of their vital energy into the process of digestion that they can't seem to just get enough digestive fortitude to actually push it out of their system efficiently. So it's not uncommon for people, once they start intermittent fasting after about a week or two, for them to just start unloading pound after pound of waste. It's because your digestion, your body's getting a break from excessive digestion, and now it can use that to start elimination. In my opinion, digestion and elimination are much different, because you can digest food all day. But are you eliminating it is the question. Because even healthy foods that you've digested, if you're not eliminating them efficiently and properly, those foods now become wastes, and they rancidify, putrefy, and toxify the entire physiology. You have to remember, you guys, that every single major organ center is connected to every major organ of your physiology is connected intimately to your colon. If you damage the health of your colon, you damage the health of the entire physiology. Everything is connected in this miraculous machine that we call the human body. So it's amazing to see how many benefits people derive from intermittent fasting and fasting in general. Now, I don't like to recommend that people fast for longer than a day or two. I don't like to recommend fasting at all. I'm just telling you what works for me and what has worked for me and what continues to work for me and what continues to work for thousands and thousands and thousands of people in this world. We've been taught this idea that in order for the body to stay healthy, we constantly have to put food into it. That's a very, very valid form of mind control, because foods deplete energy. Constant digestion, let me reiterate that. Constant digestion, it depletes energy, you guys. So healthy digestion is when you give your body the nutritional provisionments, the exact provisionments that it needs to maintain health and to grow. There's a fine line between enough and way too much. So a lot of people don't just eat to live, they live to eat. And when you live to eat, you constantly want to put things in your mouth and consume them. I'm guilty of it as well. There's been periods just recently where I'd eat way too much. But what I've found is when I fall off the wagon, I always find my way back on it. For years now, I've been doing this. I'll go for months and months sometimes on the intermittent fasting protocols, and then occasionally I'll fall off. And what's interesting to me is every time I've fallen off, I've always gotten back on it. And my body thrives when I get back on it. And it's these experiences where I've fallen off and gotten back on it that have really showed me the power of intermittent fasting in general. Because falling off the wagon and starting to eat excessive amounts of food again, after a couple weeks of doing that, you can really gauge how that makes you feel. It usually makes you feel backed up, you gain weight, you feel more sluggish, you don't want to do as much, you feel lethargic, your mental creativity starts diminishing, your athletic ability diminishes, your flexibility, your range of motion. So when I do fall off, I'll experience the negative health consequences of not sticking to the intermittent fasting protocols. And then when I get back on it, it's like, bam, everything starts working better again. Everything starts working more efficiently, not only physically, but mentally. And that's a beautiful thing, because who doesn't want to have more mental activation? Who doesn't want to have more mental creativity? Who doesn't want to be more mentally clear, so to speak? So one of the things that has just fascinated for years is that in the idea that the body needs less to perform better, because it kind of contradicts the mainstream way of approaching nutrition. Nutrition makes you believe, or wants you to believe, mainstream nutrition, let's put it that way, will teach you and educate the idea that you're supposed to have breakfast, and then you're supposed to potentially have snacks between breakfast and lunch, and then at lunch you're supposed to have maybe a little snack between dinner, and then you can have a healthy dessert, or this and that. That is a lot of eating every day, ladies and gentlemen. That's a lot of digestion that has to be used to the constant influx of foods that you're shoving into your system. In my opinion, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. Breakfast is potentially, after my research and my own trial and error and research or experiments, you name it, breakfast can potentially be the most dangerous meal of the day. Because a lot of people aren't even consuming healthy breakfast. In the United States of America, it's usually bacon and eggs, hash browns, orange juice and coffee. You're mixing all these different food groups that are already filled full of cholesterol, like the eggs, filled full of excessive amounts of oils, like the hash browns, cooked oils. Bacon, which is dead pig, dead swine, filled full of different hormones, antibiotics, and vaccines. Coffee, acidic. Orange juice, acidic. Many people are combining. They'll have orange juice in the morning, then they'll have some coffee. Very dangerous combination, you guys. To have all this stuff in the gastric chamber, to have all this stuff inside your physiology every morning, to think that we need that to thrive. No, no, no. We're like a plant to some extent, where we really benefit more from water than food. And you can take solid foods, you can create smoothies with all the amino acids, all the pigments, all the chlorophyll, everything that you need, all the protein, all the vitamins, all the fiber. You can take every little thing that the body needs and put it into a more fluid state, so to speak, like a smoothie, and pre-digest it. You can live off that kind of nutrition. You can thrive on that type of nutrition. The body doesn't need excessive amounts of solids. Pre-digesting your food can be very, very beneficial. Now, I'm not saying that solid foods are bad, but the way that people shove solid foods into their systems here in the Matrix is very, very damaging and very, very detrimental. And in my opinion, it's one of the leading causes of all the cognitive decline, the mental decline, the physiological lack of health. So, and like I said earlier, when I intermittent fast, when I fast in general, and there are times where I'll do 2-day fast, 3-day fast, 7-day fasts. I've done a couple 10-day fasts, but I really like the intermittent fasting. But even when I intermittent fast, I get this feeling where I feel really light, like a feather. And I notice that my skin reacts much differently to the sun. Even when I ground myself, when I walk barefoot on the earth, I absorb more information from the earth in a fasted state. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily because I'm empty and I don't have a lot of food in my system, or maybe my creativity or my ability to tap into more of my mind is activated, and I can feel more of what's really going on when the sun hits my skin, when I feel the electrons going up into my feet, into my meridian system when I walk on the earth. When you exclude excessive amounts of food, the mind has an affinity to kind of open and open and open, and you are more susceptible to feeling the subtle impressions of the natural world. You're also more, depending on the person, you're more able to gauge and feel the subtle impressions of other humans, their emotions, things like that. So it seems like fasting in general, getting rid of all the excessive foods, really helps tap into not only the power of the physiology and the cleansing mechanisms. Fasting seems to kickstart the self-healing process within the biology, the innate healing codes within the system, but it also seems to just make the mind flourish, and you can feel more of the subtle impressions of the more subtle aspects of life, ladies and gentlemen, like the sun hitting your face. I absorb so much. I also don't burn as readily when I'm in a fasted state, which I find really interesting. So I tend to get much more out of life when I'm in a fasted state, and so I'm going to continue to talk about it here on YouTube, and I'm going to continue to implement these protocols into my life because I achieve massive benefit from them. So I hope that my channel, my messages, and my messages and my passion can help inspire you to maybe think a little bit more about what it is you're putting into your system. Contemplate what you've been clinging to, because oftentimes we cling to things that are very non-beneficial to our health and our growth, both physically and spiritually. Another thing I like to do, you guys, when I'm in general, when I'm especially in a fasted state, even when I'm not in a fasted state, is the magnesium protocols. I have a little bit of magnesium chloride that I dissolved in distilled water in this bottle, this dropper bottle, and I keep this in my car wherever I go. And I put it on my skin and I absorb it through my wrists. Sometimes I'll put it on my face or on my entire body, and then I'll go get in the sun and absorb sun rays while I'm actually absorbing magnesium. Most people are magnesium deficient here in the Matrix. Now, what does this have to do with fasting? I was really essentially talking about earlier how many of the health protocols, like the teas and things like that, the sun therapy, the grounding therapies, you can derive, it seems, more benefit out of them when you're in a fasted state. The same goes with the magnesium protocols. When I'm in a fasted state and I put magnesium in my body, I can really gauge how it makes me feel, and I seem to absorb it better. So I'd love to hear from you guys about your experiences with fasting, intermittent fasting, block fasting, cyclic fasting, you name it. How do you feel on these protocols? How has it changed your life? Have you had beneficial experiences with it or negative experiences? I'd love to hear from you guys. Please hit the like button if you liked this video. Please network my video around, my content around, if you believe it can help other people. I'd greatly appreciate that. Sharing is caring. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button for frequent updates. Although I haven't updated this channel in about 2 months, I plan on doing weekly posts from now on. I need to. But aside from that, you guys, I do get asked quite often, what do I consume during my fasting window? Now, for those who don't know what the fasting window is, when we're talking about intermittent fasting, the fasting window is the predetermined amount of time that you fast before you eat your meal. So if you were going to fast for 16 hours a day and then have like an 8-hour eating window, excuse me, the fasting window is that 16-hour period. Now I get asked again often, what do you like to consume during the fasting window? I like to consume a lot of water, filtered or distilled restructured water, and I like to consume teas. I'll even consume black coffee. Black coffee, if consumed in a fasted state, has a completely different effect on the mind and body. It acts as a very potent appetite suppressant, and it can even become, if you use it properly, it can be used as a powerful meditation tool. Small amounts of caffeine, believe it or not. But I like to consume a good amount of tea. I try to drink more water than I do tea, just because most teas seem to have kind of a diuretic effect. But that doesn't mean that teas aren't healthy. I drink hibiscus a lot. I'll drink hibiscus with elderberry in it. I'll drink a lot of the African red rooibos tea, the fermented red tea from Africa that is filled full of polyphenols, anti-cancerous constituents, and a handful of other beneficial minerals and things like that. Red rooibos is one of my favorite teas. I like to consume these teas ice cold. I don't like to drink a lot of teas hot, only during winter. And even then, I don't really drink hibiscus if it's hot. I always drink hibiscus cold. It tastes best that way. And I make it really, really dark. I like my hibiscus darker than most people like it. I like my hibiscus so dark red that you can't even see through it when you hold it up to the light. If you don't like hibiscus, chances are it's because you've made it too strong. You'll know you've made it too strong if it has a really tart flavor, and if when you hold it up to light, you have trouble seeing through it. If it's blood red, chances are you've made it really strong. And hibiscus seems to have I react best to hibiscus if it's made very, very strong. You get more vitamin C that way, and more manganese, and you name it. Hibiscus is an interesting one because in large doses is actually, I believe, considered a psychedelic, believe it or not. It has psychedelic properties. Mild psychedelics, but I believe hibiscus is listed as a psychedelic. But one other thing that I like to do during the fasting window is absorb sunlight. I'll clean my skin with the skin cleaning protocols, sometimes just witch hazel and alcohol. And I'll come out here and take my shirt off and just sit in the sun and just absorb sunlight. Sunlight has a very appetite suppressant effect, I've noticed. So if you get hungry during the fasting window and you don't want to blow it and eat early, try getting some sunlight. It may help you. Try drinking a big glass, 8 to 12 ounces of water. Try drinking carbonated water. Carbonated water isn't the healthiest substance that there is, but in my opinion, it's much healthier than ending your fasting window early so that you can eat. If you drink carbonated water during the fasting window, the bubbles have an affinity to make you feel fuller. So it can make you feel fuller, and it can help you get through another hour or so. I've had experiences where I really wanted to eat, and I drank some carbonated water, and I didn't want to eat for another 2.5 to 3 hours. Awesome tool. A lot of these tools, even though they may not be the healthiest things, they can be used in a way to help us achieve greater health, if you catch my drift. A little bit of carbonated water isn't going to kill you. People get into this intermittent fasting thing, or fasting in general, and say, oh, you can't drink carbonated water, it'll deplete magnesium levels. Well, if you break your fast early and eat a bunch of food, depending on those foods that you're going to eat, you're going to deplete more magnesium that way than if you actually drank some carbonated water and derived more benefit out of the fasting experience. Fasting helps stimulate and activate a process within the biology, within the physiology, known as autophagy. Some people pronounce it autophagy. Autophagy is how I pronounce it. Autophagy is the body's self-recycling mechanism that is kick-started through fasting. It causes your body to seek out old, unnecessary material, digest it as a fuel source, and eliminate it. It's beautiful. You only achieve that through fasting. Exercise during the fasting window can help you kickstart autophagy. So what I like to do is in the morning I get on my bike after a full night of fasting and ride for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on my energy levels. Sometimes I'll just kind of have a brisk cycling experience where I'll just go kind of slow for about an hour, but sometimes I'll just do really intense cycling for 30 minutes to an hour. This helps your body get rid of any undigested material from the night before, and it helps kickstart autophagy. It's going to increase your metabolism, it's going to increase your heart rate, you're going to circulate blood throughout your system more efficiently, you're going to clear blockages out potentially through the increase in blood flow. And by kickstarting autophagy, that's really going to help you. You're going to achieve more out of the fasting window, in my opinion, if you get a little bit of exercise every day. But you have to listen to your body. It can be very easy to go a little overboard. Coffee seems to enhance the efficacy of autophagy. I believe stevia extract has been shown to increase the efficacy of autophagy. A lot of herbs do as well. I like the astragalus root. I like the calorific teas. Certain teas do have calories in them. I like the astragalus. Is one of my favorite teas. Gynostemma, things like that. Hibiscus, again, elderberry. Chrysanthemum flower is a great thing to consume during the fasting window. Chrysanthemum flower is good for the memory, it's good for the eyes. It also helps impart, depending on the quality of the flower, a state of calm. Many people, millions of people drink chrysanthemum every day as a health tonic. It's been said that if you drink chrysanthemum before you go to bed at night, it helps you wake up feeling refreshed, and over time it helps enhance the memory. I'm really interested in the flowers. I talk about the flowers more. I talk about consuming flowers and using edible flowers as health tools on my website over at www.autophagy.com. excuse me. I talk about the health benefits of flowers and consuming flowers and many more other subjects ranging from Kundalini, health, healing, you name it, fasting, the Merkaba, spirituality. I talk a lot about this stuff over at my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Sacred Serpent. Again, www.patreon.com/Sacred Serpent. And for $5 a month, you can gain access to just multiple hours of content that you won't find here on the Patreon page. I do text updates, I post pictures, I post audio uploads, I do polls from time to time, and you can have access to asking me questions if you wish to. There's 5 different reward tiers. There's a $5, a $15, a $25 and up monthly subscription. So if you're interested, go over there and check that out. But I do believe that we can experience massive growth, you guys, from eating less. I think this would be one of the greatest ways also to help have a direct impact on the health of the environment. We consume, I believe, here in the United States more food than any other nation in this world. And considering how bad the health statistics are here in the Matrix, we could probably benefit from eating less of the wrong foods and eating more of the right foods. It's not necessarily always how much of the right foods you consume, it's how much you consume, because you can consume too much of the right foods, excuse me. If you constantly think shoveling things into your system is good for you, chances are, if you do the research, you'll be gravely mistaken. It's not how much we eat, it's what we eat, how we eat it, and the quality of what we eat. The body doesn't need all this stuff all the time. It needs things, but it doesn't need excessive amounts of things. People driving by looking at me like I'm just talking at the window. It's kind of funny. But in 1976, I talk about this quote a lot. I've quoted this quote a lot here on my YouTube channel because it's very powerful. And you can lift this quote from Dr. John W. Apsley II's book, The Genesis Effect, Spearheading Regeneration with Wild Blue-Green Algae. Again, that's Dr. John W. Apsley II's book, The Genesis Effect, Spearheading Regeneration with Wild Blue-Green Algae. Amazing book on health in general and blue-green algae, AFA blue-green algae from Klamath Lake, Oregon. Also known as Aphanisomenum flossaqua blue-green algae. That's what AFA stands for. But in that book, he states that in 1976, the U.S. Public Health Department said that only 1.5% of all Americans were actually healthy. Again, in 1976, the U.S. Public Health Department said that only 1.5% of all Americans were actually healthy. That was in the 70s. Things have gotten much worse. So, in that gap of time, I'm almost startled to uncover the recent statistic. It might be better off just remaining ignorant to it, because I already know it's going to be worse than the statistic done in the 70s. In 76, 1.5% of all Americans were actually healthy. We lack real health. We lack a connection to the source through the arousal, stimulation, and rising of Kundalini. We lack the vital essence of what we have the potential to be. This is one of the greatest ways that they've been able to mind control us, ladies and gentlemen. By diminishing our energetic reserves and our health reserves, you lose the power of your consciousness in your mind to the point where you can be easily susceptible to the impressions of external stimuli, external stimuluses, such as mind control programs, such as advertisements, such as when you go down the street and you're driving down one of the main roads and there's like 100 different fast food restaurants. I think I need that. The power of suggestion is strong, and that's how they succeed here in this material matrix, ladies and gentlemen, by tapping into your ability to not question suggestion. So when you're driving down the road and you see a fast food joint, and before you even rationally think about it, you go, damn, that sounds good, I need that. And you just turn the blinker on and you go right on through and get your little whatever it is you need, you think you need, when you don't need it. Suggestion creates a lot of problems with humanity because humanity doesn't have a mental filter to actually scan the suggestions and how we react to them. In order to get healthy, we have to rebuild the mental filter, ladies and gentlemen. And the mental filter is a metaphor for how we scan suggestions from external stimuluses. Because if you fall short to that and you give in to a lot of the suggestive stuff out here, you will just do all sorts of stuff that this matrix wants you to do, like eat all the garbage foods, eat all the junk foods from the fast food places that have they have. I need to take a breather. It's just a joke. It's an unfortunate joke. The lack of health here. Come on, people. What do you have to lose by trying to increase your health? So many different ways you can do it. Fasting is just one of them. One of the most efficacious ones, in my opinion. One of the most direct and powerful. Fasting allows you to stop interfering with the body's intelligences, its innate intelligence. Fasting allows you to allow the body's intelligence to start healing itself. Otherwise, you're just throwing blocks in front of the body's intelligence. When you fast, the body knows how to heal itself. When you cut yourself, your body heals itself. You didn't heal that. Fasting allows you to tap into the powers of the body's self-healing mechanisms in the body's own intelligence for healing, because you stop getting in the way of it by putting food into your system constantly. Most people will go their entire life eating 1 to 3 meals a day. That's a problem there. It's a huge problem. 3 meals a day. What do you... It would be one thing if it was health food, if it was food that people had grown, heirloom food with minerals in it, enzymes, vitamins, nutrition, pigments. The food on the market is so bastardized and so diminished in nutrient quality that it shouldn't even be legally called food. It should be called kinda like food stuff, or foodstuffs, or just stuff. Stuff would be a much better term. I'm going to wrap this one up, you guys. I hope you derived benefit from this video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope it got you to think. I hope that this year you achieve greatness with your health, with your peace of mind, with your happiness. And until next time, peace be with you all.